for gun safety group, and I'm very proud of that. I think that's important to people of all age groups, whether it's the younger students, and of course everybody needs to feel safe in all the places they go in their daily lives. And so many of the common sense gun safety measures, the universal background checks where a background check is conducted on every gun purchase, banning the sale of assault weapons and the high-capacity ammunition magazines, those things just make sense, and they're favored by a vast majority of all people in the country, of both parties, whether they're gun owners or not. Those are things there's just no real reasonable reason to object to.
When we have talked to people in Texas before, we've heard repeatedly, in fact, it was kind of a running joke in our Texas episode, that Texas isn't a Republican state, it's a non-voting state. So
that's right. Yeah.
I was wondering what sort of energy you're seeing around voter registration this year, and do you think that voters, people who haven't been voting in the past, will be coming out in larger numbers? Do you think that's going to change the calculus at all?
I absolutely do. I totally buy into the fact that Texas is a non-voting state. I heard numbers before, and I don't think I can quote them exactly, but that, I think this was about Hillary lost by 60,000 votes or something in our district, and there were 200,000 people who were registered who didn't show up to vote. So that's without even needing to register more people. It's just the people need to show up and take the time and the effort and the interest to show up to vote. So I think a lot of the energy and enthusiasm I'm seeing with people getting involved and volunteering and showing up for all these meetings, and the fact that the people who are there are going knocking on doors and making phone calls, and we're writing postcards, all those things are putting politics much more front and center in people's minds. I think we've had kind of as a nation the luxury for as long as I can remember of just kicking back and being pretty oblivious and saying, oh, well, I don't really pay any attention to politics. I'm not really interested in that. It doesn't really have any effect on me. And, and just kind of, being real blasé about the whole thing. And suddenly they've realized that, yeah, it does matter, and I do need to get involved and do my part, because that's one of the biggest responsibilities of being a citizen in our country.
Yeah, I wonder, too, if having Beto O'Rourke at the top of the ticket in Texas is going to get some more people enthusiastic about going out to vote, too. It sure seems like people love him.
He's awesome. Yeah, I've seen him a number of times, and he rocks. He surely does. And yeah, he is helping, I think, the enthusiasm level all across the state. And when we see people in District 24 with a Beto sign in their yard, our thing is, that Beto sign needs a Jan sign to keep it company and be its friend in your yard. So there are lots of yards that have a Beto sign and a Jan sign, so we like that for sure. And we are, I should throw in at this point, too, we are coming right up on our September 30th end of the quarter fundraising deadline. And then, of course, the October 9th voter registration deadline. But the fundraising is what lets us buy more of those signs. We've just put in an order for some of the big 4-foot by 4-foot signs for intersections. Those are expensive enough that we're not going to have a lot of those, but we're looking for radio time and TV time and all things that we can do more of if we get donations, soon, so we can make those commitments and get things set up.
And if our listeners would like to help support those efforts, how can they do that?
My website is janmcdowell.com, and there is a big donate button on there, and that would be the place.
All right. We'll put a link for that up on our website. And I've seen some pictures of yard signs that say another Republican for Jan. So that's great, too.
Yes.
Ooh.
That was a suggestion by somebody on my Facebook page a few months back, and so we just got a small batch of those, but they've been going out, and it sure is fun to see another Republican for Jan McDowell. So.
That's great. Well, Jan, thank you so much for speaking with us. And thanks for getting back out there and running again this year after having run in 2016. I love that it's such a different energy. And I think it's so fantastic that people who have that experience of campaigning are now using that. And you're going to win this year.
Well, thank you. That's the plan. And I have a tremendous team. When we were talking about the Another Republican Sons, my team keeps coming up with just awesome ideas. Most of them are professional people who are donating their services, and I just couldn't be more thrilled. And we are going to make it happen this time.
All right, excellent. We'll be watching your district on November 6th.
Yep.
All right, Kelly and Sophie, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Are you looking for a podcast that explores art house cinema and hidden gems? I'm Caitlin, and I host Her Head in Films, a podcast that makes movies personal. I talk about my deep love for cinema and why it's so life-saving for me. My head isn't in the clouds, my head is in films, so come and join me. Check out my website at herheadinfilms.com.
I am here with Jeramey Anderson. He is currently a state representative in Mississippi. He is running for Congress in the Mississippi 4th District. Hi, Jeramey.
Hi, Kelly. How are you?
Great. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So I wonder if you could just start with telling us a little bit about your background and how you first got into politics, and then why you've decided now to run for U.S. Congress.
Sure. Well, like I said, I'm so excited to be joining you, and I appreciate the invitation. As you mentioned, I'm Jeramey Anderson. I'm from the state of Mississippi, currently the state representative for District 110, which covers Moss Point and Pascagoula. I have served in the legislature for 5 years, first elected in 2013. I am the youngest legislator ever elected in Mississippi, and at the age of 21, and the youngest African-American elected in the country. So I have been no stranger to challenges as it relates to the political arena. I ran because I had to. I also ran because my generation did not see people that was their age in this area. And I just remember sitting in an elementary school, wanting to be president one day, and had no idea, how to go about doing that. And oftentimes kids in elementary school and middle school and even up to high school have those same aspirations. They know A, where they are, and they know Z, where they want to get to, but it's the in-between that they can't figure out. So I ran to inspire my generation that you can reach those goals, whether that's doctors, be a doctor, a lawyer, and it all starts now. I also ran because my grandfather was very influential in the city of Moss Point, and a lot of people wanted him to run for office, and he just felt like you didn't need a title to make a difference in your community, and I definitely feel that same way. But I believe that, that if you see something in your community that you don't like, then you have the power to change that. And I just believe in service, and I believe that I want to be a part of the change in my community that moves my district, move my state, and move the country forward. And this is a great opportunity in 2013 that I saw. I took advantage of it. I had a message that resonated with my community, and then same thing going to Washington. And that message is, yes, I'm young, but folks always say, you guys are the leaders of the future, or the leaders of tomorrow, and I believe we're the leaders of today. And that's really, really important for folks to understand that it's time for the torch to be passed, but at the same time, we have to make sure our generation is being encompassing with our parents and our grandparents, because they have the experience, they have the knowledge and the wisdom, and we have the drive and the energy right now. And if we bring those two together, there's nothing that we can't do to move this country forward.
Can you tell me a little bit about the 4th District? So this is the part of Mississippi that includes the coast?
That is correct. The 4th Congressional District is 14 counties. It's, of course, the coastal counties all the way up to the southern part of Clark County, and it's the southeastern part of Mississippi.
Okay, and what is the makeup of the district? What do the people there do? What are their livelihoods, and what are you hearing from them as you talk to them?
Sure. So the district is about 25%, maybe 26% African American. Very high population of Caucasian Americans. We have a very high rate of Hispanic Americans, and we're trying to make sure we have all bases covered. The coast is very, very progressive because a lot of young people come to the coast. Those that do decide to stay in the state of Mississippi come to the coast, and then they also go to Jackson. But the industry here, specifically on the coast, is of course Ingalls Shipbuilding, the hospital, and then the school. And that is very, very big here. And as we traveled the district last week, what we heard throughout different communities is the lack of opportunity that folks have, especially in our small towns, small cities. They're having to travel 30, 40 minutes and sometimes longer just to get decent paying jobs. And we also heard about the living wage needing to be increased, which that's something that I've been pushing during my time in the legislature, is one to just establish a minimum wage law in the state of Mississippi. Right now we don't have one. It's $7.25 by default, which is completely unacceptable. We've got folks that are working full-time jobs that can still qualify for welfare and government assistance, and that's unacceptable. We also hear about the lack of accountability for our lawmakers. Folks find themselves voting for people that they've never ever seen before. Our campaign is grassroots. We're going knocking on doors. We're sitting in living rooms and having those conversations with people about issues that are important to them, and that's something that traditionally have not been done throughout this district.
So you mentioned the young people that decide to stay. I know that Mississippi has a problem with a lot of young people deciding to leave after they graduate from high school or college. What are some of the things you think would help keep the younger generation in Mississippi?
Sure, and Mississippi, as you mentioned, does have a brain drain problem where, and I always say you can walk through any high school, and found out last night that you can actually walk through almost any college and university and find the same thing. And that's that when you ask young people, what do you want to do after graduation, the first thing they want to tell you is leave Mississippi. And that's because of the regressive policies that continue to spill out into our communities from the Capitol, and the perception that is continuing to be encouraged outside of the state of Mississippi by our congressmen and women is that, it's extremely regressive. And there's folks in our communities and in our state that really crave change and want to see Mississippi be a more progressive state, and are working very, very hard to do that. I think that also the lack of opportunities is what drives young people out of the state of Mississippi, because, we're told to go to school, get a degree, and you can get a good paying job. No one ever told us that good paying job didn't exist here, that we'd have to move in order to do that. And I believe that Mississippi is a great place to live, and I believe it has tremendous opportunities that just have not been tapped into yet. So I would like to see more opportunities here so that our young people that are graduating from college that, deserve good paying jobs and have the opportunity to work and live and build a great life for themselves and their family here in the great state of Mississippi.
So you've started to touch on this a little bit, I think, but this district is rated by most of the rating agencies as being really Republican, one of the most Republican districts in the country. The past few election cycles has been sort of overwhelmingly Republican voting. But what do you think is sort of your path to victory? What are you seeing as your way of winning in a district that, at least on paper, looks so Republican?
Yeah, well, what we see statistically is this district leaning extremely Republican, as you mentioned. But what we find when we go into these communities is that we've got a lot of progressive folks who just simply don't engage in the process, because folks have said so often that, if you're voting for a Democrat, your vote pretty much doesn't count. So what we have is folks that are completely disengaged from the process because of that. We also see that folks continue to talk down on the possibilities of a Democrat, winning this seat, keeping in mind that prior to 2011, the seat was held by a Democrat. So that's something that we see throughout the district, and our job as a campaign is to provide inspiration to those voters, because we've got a lot of folks in